Hey everyone, so today we're talking about this lens, which is the Sigma 85mm, which I think might be the best 85mm lens that you can buy for Sony cameras right now. Let me show you an image here, just so you can look and see how sharp this is. From corner to corner, this shot is at f1.4. Look at how much detail there is all across the frame. But you know what's crazy about this image? This isn't even the full-size image, this is cropped in. Look at how much detail is in here now that we crop out. And you know what's even crazier is this image shot at f1.4 is still only showing about 1/4 of the entire image frame. Here's the full photo. So apologies for the trickery, but just to say, this lens is sharp, it's incredibly sharp. I don't think you can beat it in terms of sharpness. But before we can talk too much about this lens, we need to look at its predecessor, which came out in 2016. This OG Sigma lens was built and designed for DSLRs, and it was designed very well. In fact, it won a ton of awards, and to this day, it's still the highest rated lens on DxOMark. Literally the best rated lens on their entire database. The problem with it though is in being designed for DSLRs and just focusing on being optically perfect, it's huge. It's a behemoth. It weighs 2.5 pounds, which for perspective, that's like the weight of a pineapple. And frankly, this lens felt like carrying a pineapple around. So from what I understand, Sigma's whole goal with this new 85mm lens was to take all of the amazing aspects of that original OG 85mm lens that Sigma made and translate that into a much smaller, compact, form-fitting physical body. But there's a physics problem at play here. You can't simply take something that was designed around the physics and make it significantly smaller. So shrinking the size of this lens comes with some consequences. But this is where Sigma says, we can make sure that the only things that are affected are things that we can manage in camera or in our editing platform.
Distortion and vignetting.
So both distortion and vignetting theoretically can be corrected in camera and in the computer. And this is a really interesting concept because basically Sigma's saying, look, everything that you can't manage in camera or in the computer, we'll make perfect in this lens. Everything else, we'll just let your camera and your computer fix so that we can make it something small, compact, and manageable. And so Sigma did it. They built this lens that's significantly smaller than the original one from 2016, but it does have those two issues, distorting and vignetting, which again, Sigma says can be corrected in camera or in your editing platform. And this is where things get a little interesting for me and where I was quite curious. So let's talk about these things in turn. So distortion and vignetting. Now with distortion, if you have your lens correction turned off in camera, you will notice this lens distorts a ton. It very much curves the edges. If you turn on and off that profile in Lightroom or your editing software, you'll notice there is significant distortion. So what's interesting about distortion is it's not just the image that gets distorted. There's a lot of other little issues that can happen, such as field curvature, where your plane of focus isn't flat in front of the image. And that would be an issue. Or astigmatism, where if you're taking a photo of a point source of light, it becomes stretched instead of being a point source. And there's lateral and longitudinal chromatic aberration, and then sagittal coma flare. All things that could be issues if your lens has significant distortion. What's interesting is that Sigma said that they actually ensured all of these elements, which you can't simply correct by flipping a switch on your editing software or changing a setting in your camera. They said all of these are corrected. And from my experience, this is totally true. I was really pleased to see that if I was taking photos that were, I knew, going to be significantly distorted, I could trust my plane of focus was still flat in front of me at whatever distance my focus is set to. And this is huge if you're trying to capture portraits or whatever, and you need to trust and understand that people standing in a straight line are all going to be in focus. And when it comes to these issues of chromatic aberration, I found it to be really minimal with this lens. I think it does an amazing job. Frankly, I owned that old OG 85mm And I have to say this one absolutely competes in those areas. And then sagittal coma flare. I played with this a bit, taking some photos of the Milky Way. It's not exactly a Milky Way type of lens, but I took a couple photos and I saw, again, no issues. This had a ton of detail. But this is one where we start to see that second issue come in, and that's vignetting. So this lens does have significant vignetting, way more than its predecessor, and it's something you'll notice right away. And just to give a taste of my perspective, I like some vignetting in my photos. I think it's something that, adds a little bit of character and helps me to focus. I'm usually kind of framing things in the center anyway, so I like that the darker edges bring focus towards the lighter objects in the center. But this can be an issue. And in this instance where I was taking Milky Way photos, you can see if I turn off my vignetting or turn on the correction profile, you can see that there's a ton of vignetting, and it's almost 2 stops of light in the corners from the corner to the center at f1.4 with this aperture wide open. And that's a lot. Vignetting's a problem, and you can't simply correct it. I know that Sigma says you can in editing profiles and you can in camera, but it doesn't do a perfect job. And maybe it's just these profiles aren't as up to date as they should be, but I will say if you want to correct it, it doesn't do a perfect job of correcting that vignetting. So vignetting seems to be the one sort of downfall of this lens, and the one sort of downfall of Sigma having made this body more compact. The distortion, I don't think it's an issue. Your camera can correct this very well, and from my experience using Lightroom, it does the same. It does it perfect, there's no issues. I would trade that for the compact, lightweight body any day of the week, because again, this thing weighs a pound less than the original Sigma. So another thing that I've noticed about this lens that I think is really amazing is how it handles backlighting and flare. So when Sigma announced this, they talked about their Ghostbusters team, who the entire intent of them is to reduce flare and ghosting in the front of their lens element. And with this lens, hands down, I'm so impressed. They definitely did it. And being able to shoot into backlighting with this without any sort of issue is incredible. You can still get some lens flare. It's impossible to get rid of wholly from what I understand, but they're very minimal, very well controlled. I think this thing's a joy to shoot towards the sun with. So when I compare this to the old lens, the thing I notice the most is, yes, the size and the weight are so much nicer. You're not carrying a pineapple around. You've got a compact, lightweight 85mm lens that's superb in terms of how it shoots. Yes, there is the challenge of vignetting, which you can correct a lot, but I would say it's not perfect. And there's distortion, which I would say you can completely correct. Overall, because of the price point, I think this is the best 85mm lens that you could buy for a Sony camera right now. I hope you liked this video. If there's more questions you have or anything else you want to know, please put it in the comments below. And then if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.